Sergeant. He spent his last 8 years in the military as part of a special missions unit. Jeremy has deployed to Kosovo, Somalia, Jordan, and multiple times to Iraq and Afghanistan in support of the global war on terror. His background includes leadership development, geopolitical and strategic coalition development, and counterterrorism expertise. As a member of the Special Operations Forces community, Jeremy is adept and experienced in negotiating with sensitive and complex cultural environments, some of which you may have seen here in the slideshow. He's been referred to as a diplomat commando because of his ability to engage with people at all levels, from warlords to the president of the country. Since retiring in February of 2016, which, Jeremy, you don't look like retirement age, but Jeremy has worked extensively throughout the Middle East and Africa, including northern Iraq, where he's helped to teach women rescued from ISIS how to defend themselves. To that end, Jeremy decided to establish a 501c3 volatile charities to help empower women who are the target of violence on a scale that most people cannot comprehend. Jeremy is married to his wonderful wife, Robin. Together they have 4 children. Please join me in welcoming Jeremy Barnes.
Good afternoon. Give me a second here. I'm going to set up my slideshow for you. Won't serenade you with any more Linkin Park or AC/DC. So I'm Jeremy. I'd like to appreciate everyone. Thank you for having me here. It's an amazing turnout. Thank you, Dennis, for setting all this up. This is going to be great. So picture there, Afghanistan, 2010, 2011. They all kind of blend together, lots of trips there into Iraq. As part of a special missions unit, I had just gotten back off a target based on the lack of flashbangs and muddy boots. I'd say it was probably a good target. I grew up playing Army as a kid. I'm the oldest of 5 boys. That's all we did as kids, run around in Kansas, play in the woods. We used to tie each other up to trees in the middle of the night, and we'd have to sneak in and rescue them. The neighborhood kids got involved. My dad was a pastor, and so he would always make sure that the parents knew prior to what would be taking place, because he didn't want stories circling around the town how the pastor had tied their kid to a tree and left them in the woods. So always have a little caveat. We do the same thing now, actually, with people that come to our house for birthday parties. We'll teach them some escape and some evasion techniques, and so we'll handcuff them and show them how to shim a pair of handcuffs and maybe take them out in the woods, maybe spray them with the garden hose, some selection events, and then time them and see them how long it takes for them to escape, and then maybe have them do some escape and evasion along a specific corridor. Maybe we'll shoot at them with some airsoft guns just to add an element of realism. Apparently it's a huge hit. No parents have complained. No charges have been filed as of yet, so far so good. I joined the Army January 10th of 1996. Didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. My dad was a pastor. Everyone had told me that I should be a preacher, and I thought that sounded horrible. But I thought, well, maybe they know. One Sunday we had a missionary come and speak. That missionary was from Papua New Guinea. And I remember being captivated by his stories of cannibalism and warriors and this cool culture. And so I thought, well, I don't think preaching is probably for me, but maybe a missionary, because I like the idea of adventure and travel. Went to Bible college for a year, absolutely hated it, and joined the Army. And when I told my dad I had joined the Army, he was like, "What took you so long? We've been waiting for this." And still in the back of my mind, I had the thought that I was probably supposed to be in the ministry, right? And church folks make things weird and awkward, and that's not really accurate, but that was what I had in my mind. And so was in the infantry, and had been to Kosovo. We were in Germany and had come back, and I was talking to one of my brothers about some of the experiences that I had, and I was getting ready to get out of the Army. And he was like, dude, what? Well, I won't repeat exactly what he said, but basically, what is wrong with you? And, I've been told there's a few words I can't use. I will do my best to not use any of those. Apologize if they slip out. Basically, he said, you need to stay in the Army. It is possible that God has called you to be in the military, which was a thought that I had never considered. And after that point, I gave myself permission to be fully engaged with what I was doing in the military, and everything changed. I went to Ranger School within a few months. While I was in Ranger School, I met some Special Forces guys. And I remember being really impressed with how they planned operations, how they thought, how they carried themselves. And so 4 months after graduating Ranger School, I went to selection for Special Forces and loved it. I mean, it was hard, but I liked the challenge. And I enjoyed it. It was the first time I'd had an opportunity to push myself to see what I was capable of. A lot of people talk about doing things. Maybe I'm going to start a business. I'm going to go to selection. I'm going to go to Ranger School. People have good ideas of things that they want to do, but they never do them for a series of reasons. But fear of failure is probably number one. I know I had other friends who talked about going to Ranger School and to selection, and it never went because they were scared. What if I don't make it? What if I don't have what it takes? Right? That's the age-old question that everyone wants to know. Do I have what it takes? Doesn't matter what it is that you're doing in business or in life. And so people decide not to do it. They opt out of a process that would give them the opportunity to find out that I actually do have what it takes. And, even if I had gone to, when I was in Ranger School, I was a horrible ranger. I didn't know anything about light infantry tactics. I was a mechanized infantry guy, and I was clueless. I didn't know that I was supposed to have the Ranger Creed memorized before I showed up. So I spent a lot of nights studying, and I had a bunch of Ranger privates from Ranger battalions square me away and basically hold my hand and make sure that I was successful. I was a staff sergeant, so I was fairly senior midway through my career when I went to Ranger School, which is somewhat unusual. And they helped me out. But I wasn't afraid to ask for help. I didn't pretend that I knew everything because I knew that I did not. And I was very happy to ask these young privates who had been groomed since the time they came to the Army to be successful. And it worked out, and I was successful. And then I went to selection for Special Forces and loved it. In Ranger School, everyone would say, there was a saying that I will quit tomorrow. Like, I'm not going to quit today. I'm going to quit tomorrow. I hate that saying. It's ridiculous. Why in the hell would I quit tomorrow? I'm not going to quit tomorrow or the next day or the next day. I'm never going to quit. And that was my mindset with everything that I've ever done in my life. Why quit? Failure's not an option. This is the only thing that we're doing, and we're going to push forward, and we're going to make it happen. And you don't get to be a part of a special missions unit and work with the best guys in the world if you have an attitude of, maybe if it gets hard, I'll quit. Maybe I'll give this a try and see if it works out. We have that same mindset or attitude, not just for the military, which it's great for me that I was in the Army. How does that apply? But in business, in college, in life, in your marriage, right? Maybe your marriage is tough. Maybe there's some difficulties there. The same tenacity that people apply to being a part of a special missions unit to apply to Ranger School, I applied that same tenacity to my marriage. We don't know very many people that we served with that are still married. Almost all those marriages have exploded. The tremendous pressure on families and on children and on the spouses that are deployed. And it absolutely wrecks families. The families are the ones who bear far more burden than the soldier. I was playing Army. I was doing the crap that I did ever since I could walk and loved every second of it. The only reason that I retired at 20 years was because my kids, who are now 14, 16, 18, and 21, I would still be in the military and I would have missed half of their life. I was gone 8 years. Out of 20 years I was in the military, 8 years that I wasn't home. So my wife is the one who raised the kids, right, by herself, essentially over those time. And, it pisses me off when I hear my friends, and they're talking bad about their wives, or people are talking bad about their husbands. And there's that lack of professionalism and respect for their spouse or for their children. My secret to success with my marriage and to my career is being fully present to whoever I'm with. And that may be someone here at a table, where when we're talking, I'm actually making eye contact. I'm not checking my Facebook or my Twitter, screwing around on Instagram. I'm paying attention to whoever I'm talking to. With my wife, with my kids, and they show the same respect, right? Starts with the head of the household. You set that tone. When we're at the table, we pay attention. We have a conversation with one another. I would encourage you, with your families, to take that time to be intentional about being fully present. Be fully present to the people that you work with in your boardrooms when you're having these conversations, you're discussing different business opportunities, business deals. And everything comes from a relational context. And when you put people first, then business and everything else works itself out. And I'm going to tell you some stories and show you some pictures that demonstrate that. My ability to be fully present, to make friends who have guns, is the reason that I'm alive, the reason that I've been successful. There's only a few secrets in Special Forces. Number one rule is always be cool, right? Never get lost. If you are lost, make sure you still look cool. Never let anyone know. So you hate it when you're in Afghanistan, you're walking along this long column, you've just been inserted, and maybe you're doing an offset infill because we don't want the bad guys to know that the helicopters have landed close to them. And so they land a long ways away. In Afghanistan, the terrain sucks. It's hilly, mountainous. And you see the point guy who's supposed to know the route, and he's got a Garmin on his wrist. And you see the guy walking in a circle because he is recalibrating his compass. And we've been walking for 2 hours, and we're hoping that we were walking the right direction. Not what you want to see. Good times. Pre-mission in Iraq. We still have flashbangs. We haven't gone out yet. Tell you a story about Somalia. I deployed a lot. When we were surging troops in Afghanistan, we were doing 4-month rotations, 4 months on, 4 months off for 2.5, 3 years. So we stayed busy. My favorite deployment, we have lots of deployments where we're shooting dudes and flying around helicopters, and that's all predictable and not the stories I'm going to tell of helicopter crashes, and because people have heard those stories and they're just not that interesting. This is a pretty interesting story, I think. I was in Somalia. I was a team leader at an extremely remote outstation. There was no help coming if anything went sideways. We had a very small number of, and excuse me if I pause from time to time, I have to retract the information in my mind before I say it. Actually, we don't want to disclose sensitive information. So I had about 300 to 500 Somalis that we were training, and a handful of American advisors. Their job was to go out and we helped facilitate, find, fix and finish Al-Shabaab. This is a terrorist organization that's working in Somalia. The location that I was at was the location where the fighting that's depicted in the movie Black Hawk Down. It's where it took place. It's where it started. Somalia is a clan-based society, so like tribes. And the clan that we were training and the clan that lived on the other side of the town, it was those two clans that had been fighting 20 years prior. So there was a lot of tension in the town we were at. You couldn't go to the south side of the town. People in the south couldn't come to the north. There was a lot of assassinations, hand grenades that were thrown at checkpoints, low-level harassment, no open violence, but a lot of tension. And so I decided that we should meet the former warlord, who was actually detained in Black Hawk Down operations. He was one of the early guys who was arrested. He was now reformed warlord turned political leader, self-declared president of this region, which is very common in Africa. So we had a pretty extensive and an extensive source network, and we reached out to the guy, and we arranged to meet. Now, when I first started talking about having this meeting, of course, you have to have those conversations. You have to get approval from my commander in East Africa, and then it has to go back to Washington because this is a pretty big deal. The advisors in Washington said, don't let him have this meeting. He's going to start another civil war. So that's what the big brains in Washington were saying, which is pretty typical. Folks making policy and decisions for things they have no idea about on the ground, and not trusting the guys who are on the ground getting stuff done. Was there some risk? Yeah, there's risk. There's risk right now. This building could get struck by lightning. We could have a car accident on the way home. There's risk in everything you do. You do things to mitigate that risk. But this one was important. The risk was what was worth the reward. Reunification, de-escalation of tensions, and the facilitation of us extending our targeting line into an area that was off limits to us because of tribal issues. So I knew that we'd be more effective killing bad guys if we could have a successful link-up, become friends, and then that would give us access to areas that had been denied to us in the past. So after a lot of coordination, we decided to meet in a neutral location. We have our gun trucks. So those are guys that I trained and my friends trained. We had a large number of those trucks. I won't say how many. We had a bunch. We had our trucks that were up armored. All those trucks had 50 caliber machine guns, Dishka machine guns, 8 to 12 guys in the back of the truck. We parked them on line so that they could all engage the enemy at the same time. And we had some snipers that were out. And we set up our position so we can control the potential battle space, hopefully not, should something go sideways. And we see the column of dust coming from the south side of town. Like, all right, it's about to get real. We have no idea how this is going to go. And there's no air support. Like, if the bullets start flying, medevac, if it comes 6-8 hours, best case scenario, probably longer than that. And definitely a lot of people are going to die. Those 50 caliber machine guns will turn our up armored Humvees into Swiss cheese. It doesn't stop. It doesn't even slow it down. It just adds more crap in your body that causes you to bleed out faster. So it's not going to help. They pull up, and they are, of course, online. And right now, the biggest threat is not a big gunfight, but a simple accidental discharge that happens when one of these untrained soldiers who walk around with their finger on the trigger constantly pulls the trigger inadvertently, fires around. No one else knows that it was an accident. And now we have World War III and there's rounds flying everywhere. And it's going to be really bad. So I knew that I needed to control the situation immediately. So as soon as they stopped, I left my rifle in the cab of my truck, which also showed, hey, I'm coming in peace. All those nonverbals are super important when you're interacting with warlords. Number one, you should have more guns than they do because they respect violence. As you speak their language. And so I knew their language, and I was very familiar with inflicting violence on people. And I walked across. I told my guys, sit tight, and I've got an earpiece, a little chicken plate body armor that's not going to stop. It's only for my mental well-being and for the investigation. If I get killed, that they can say, yeah, he had his body armor on. He wasn't an idiot. They probably would have said that anyway, but given what we were doing. And so I walked about 100 meters across no man's land with my pistol and a radio to link up with. And their commander came out of his vehicle, and him and his entourage walked towards me. And I met basically in front of his vehicle. and I speak Arabic. I gave him an Islamic greeting, embraced him, and he said, "Let's go," and motions to hop in his truck. Decision point, right? Holy crap, this was not part of the plan. I don't know where we're going to go. I only have my pistol. I've got 2 magazines, so I could kill everyone in the vehicle, but then I'm in trouble. But I also know they're not going to kill their commander. And so the safest place I could be is right beside him. And so I jump in the truck, and of course my headset is blowing up. My dudes are like, "What the are you doing? Get out of his truck. You're crazy." I said, "Hey, relax. Just follow. Like, try to insert your vehicles somewhere close to our vehicle, so if something does go sideways, I've got some good guys that can come get me. But just follow and trail them, and let's just go wherever they go." And so we drove where I thought we would go, back down through the south side of town to his self-declared presidential palace, which was just another crappy hut with a big wall and a big parking lot, to go have tea, right? Because that's what we're going to do. So we hop out of the truck and we go and we sit at this big table, and most of his guys have dual Somali U.S. citizenship, and they want to do business, and they want USAID and Doctors Without Borders and all these other aid organizations to come back. And that wasn't going to happen because at that point in time there was a U.S. hostage that was being held not too far from where we were at. And so nobody was going to come to town for that. And so that kicked off. The meeting went great. Nobody died. There was a black mamba that was in the parking lot. The soldier, we heard a bunch of yelling and commotion. And guys from our side and guys from their side worked together and killed this deadly snake. Pretty cool. Worked out great. Kind of brought them together, de-escalated everything. Long story short, we did that link up 11 more times in 4 months. I met with the chief of police from the south side, the north side, had them come together. We started doing prisoner exchange, information exchange. Really de-escalated the situation there. The folks in Washington were freaking out. You've started this grassroots movement. The information that we were getting was of good value. And we had actually started to create a grassroots transformation in that area. So the risk was absolutely worth the reward. The juice was worth the squeeze. It turned out great. Could we have all died? If they just started shooting, but what are the chances of that? Pretty slim. But sometimes you just have to hang it out there and go for it, make things happen. And then when things have the potential to go sideways, you just take control of the situation and you force them to go in your favor. We did something similar. That's me with a bag of cash. I had briefed our command team on a region of East Africa where we didn't have a presence, and it was a major facilitation route. And so I suggested that we link up with a proposed partner force we had pre-existing relationships with there and establish line of communication, and then potentially look at training and equipping this other partner force, who were very aggressively taking the fight to the enemy, and our guys were somewhat reluctant. So it got blessed off. So myself, 2 other guys, and an interpreter got on a plane and got dropped off in the middle of nowhere, and that plane went to Mogadishu for 2 days, and the plan was come back and pick us up in 2 days and do this link up. It didn't quite work out that way. That was the bag of guns that we brought. We can't talk about that. That's what we had with us. So this guy here with the big smile on his face wanted to kill us in the first 5 minutes of getting off the aircraft. We get off the aircraft, and the plane flies away, and it's an interesting feeling, watching that plane fly away and knowing that we are stuck. We are in serious trouble if anything goes sideways. And this dude and a bunch of his guys come rolling up to provide us security. Typically, security is facing outward. They were all facing us with guns, demanding that we give them our guns. And, I'm pulling out U.S. passport, and these were Amazon forces, so African United Nations soldiers. So in theory, they are our allies. But it didn't feel very ally-like at the time when we were surrounded with dudes with guns. And so we did what we did. We made friends. We did not give them our weapons. I told them, absolutely not. You're absolutely not getting our weapons. And we looked around and we could have absolutely killed all of the guys that were there. No problem. They typically don't keep a round in the chamber. And of course we do. And so we could have killed. There weren't that many. And we figured that out later. As you're standing around afterwards when you're smoking and joking and drinking tea, and the guy has a cool rifle and hey, can I look at your gun? And of course they are happy to show you their gun. And so then I check it to see if it's loaded. It's not loaded. That's good to know. We checked a couple of others. None of them loaded. Perfect. Now I know the condition of your weapons. I'm definitely going to hear this and see that motion, and you won't have a chance if we hear that. It took about 2 hours before we were drinking tea and having bread with these guys, and then they were very happy to facilitate our operation. But because everyone kept a cool head, didn't give in to their demands of, hey, let me have your guns. No way. Never going to happen. And we were able to, that's the plane leaving. It's me looking sad with maybe a tear. So we surveyed the airfield, made sure that we could land bigger aircraft on that airfield if necessary for future operations. And we could indeed. There just happened to be a random UN helicopter that landed, which made for an epic picture. So I was glad someone took that picture. That was pretty cool. That was my interpreter. Zach, good dude. He was the interpreter on that mission. And if you don't have an interpreter who can maintain their cool and not just translate but understands cultural nuances, you'll die. Interpreters have saved my life innumerable times. From tactical interrogation, we've got guys on target and we're talking to them about what they were doing and what their friends are doing, and they give us good information. And these guys know, the interpreters know when they're lying and when they're not. Or this guy's saying he's an Arab from Baghdad, but his accent is definitely from Damascus. And this dude's a foreign fighter. Perfect. You're coming with us. Invaluable. So always make friends. And make sure they know how to use weapons. Because we would go out in such small groups that if something went sideways, you would need all the guns that you could get your hands on. My last deployment to the unit, or to Iraq, was right after ISIS had just come through. It was a horrible last deployment. We stood by and did nothing, and we watched ISIS come through. One, they had convoys of hundreds of vehicles, technicals, and we had aircraft, and we had guys on the ground to destroy them. ISIS would not be a thing, and we had no permission, no authorities to operate, and we weren't officially there, and we didn't have no boots on the ground, because we were wearing sneakers. So it's like, they don't have there's no boots on the ground, that kind of crap. It wasn't politically expedient to do the right thing and just destroy enemies. Instead, we let them create what they've created now, which is awesome. So we watched on ISR through predators and drone feed, ISIS go into villages, line people up, gun down the men, line by line, bam, 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 load the women in buses, and ship them off to be used as sex slaves in Syria. And we watched that every day, and we didn't do anything about it. I'll tell you another story about that in a minute. But the first operation that we finally conducted, we started dropping bombs to protect U.S. interests at an airfield. And we started drawing imaginary lines in the sand. And it took ISIS about a day and a half of figuring out where they would get killed and where they wouldn't. I'm going to die. I'm not going to die. and they adapt incredibly quickly. They're extremely, extremely intelligent, and frustrating to have your hands tied, to have the capacity to do something about it, but not be allowed to do it. So the first offensive operation was to retake the Mosul Dam. The Mosul Dam was key terrain. ISIS held it. That dam, when it was built, was not constructed properly. It requires a concrete mixture to be injected into the dam so it doesn't wash away almost every day. That was not happening. It had not been happening for a long time. And so there was serious concern that the dam would give way or be destroyed, and it was going to kill. It would go all the way to Baghdad, and it was going to kill a lot of people. So first operation was to retake that dam. So I am, at this point, like middle management. I'm not in charge of anything. I'm a team member, not a team leader. And our commander sat with the Kurdish commander, Mansour Barzani, who's now the president of Kurdistan, and they planned this operation. I was not there. We went... That's funny. Phone call from Somalia. Watch this vibrating, sorry. So we planned this big operation, and I'm sent. So we co-locate with the Kurdish front lines. Our only job, because we still didn't have authorities to conduct offensive on-the-ground operations, we were to provide air support. So we gave them, we could put bright panels on the hoods of their Humvees so we could differentiate. And so we would know where to drop bombs. And we had a bunch of cell phones, and we would coordinate airstrikes as they moved forward and advanced. That was the plan. So I'm told, go to Dahouk and go to the Ministry of Defense's compound and get the back briefing. Just sit in and listen and find out what their plan is, the operations the next day. I'm like, okay, no problem. I don't even really know what our plan is. And I walk in with a couple of my buddies, and they're like, oh, good, the Americans are here. What's our plan? Awesome. So we sit and we have tea and some snacks, and then they open the door, and that's what I walk into. A table lined with all these guys ready to plan the operation that I don't know anything about. There's me. That's their Secretary of Defense, now President. So in the next 2 hours, we planned the operation. They conducted it the next day, and it was a massive success. We retook the dam. They lost a few guys, a lot of explosive devices that were left behind, a lot of improvised bombs and suicide trucks. But we're pretty good about blowing those things up, and we could hit trucks that were moving with things from the air, and we devastated them and retook the dam. It was successful. I went in there thinking I was just going to get the back briefing, and when I found out we were going to plan the operation, I didn't call my boss, Eddie, what do I do? I need you to come down here. I don't know the plan. Because we were empowered. I knew that I had the authority to speak on behalf of our organization and on behalf of the U.S. government and plan this operation. I knew it would be successful. This was not my first combat operation. And it was pretty simple. Bad guys over here, good guys over here. Make 3 arrows, come in with a big swooping movement, and kill everyone. And that's what we did. And it worked great. For where you work and for your employees and the folks that are in your organizations, how empowered are they? Are they able to make decisions? We're not dropping bombs, but in a boardroom, are we listening to the input that our employees give? Do they feel confident that they can raise their hand and be the, I'm going to call bullshit, like your idea is not going to work, right? And here's why. Devil's advocate, maybe that's a nicer way to put it. Having that, we always would come up with a plan, and then we would have guys who would sharpshoot it and ask the what ifs and do the best that we could to mitigate risk. But then at the end of the day, we have to get results. Companies have to get results. You have to make money. But our people that work for you, with you, yourself, Are you guys empowered? Do your employees, or do you empower your employees to be able to say, hey, what about this? And do you actually listen? The key to all of this was me shutting my mouth. I wasn't there to try to sell them anything. This happens, I retired and I started working in the Middle East and Africa a lot. And I wasn't there to sell something. And my ability to make friends was incredible because I didn't have some agenda. I wasn't there trying to convince them that Jeremy had the best idea to solve whatever or to sell them something. I just shut my mouth and I listened and I asked questions and actually listened when they gave me answers. And if you ask enough questions of enough people, themes start to emerge. If you do that with your employees, we always have these, I'm going to frame this nicely, these sensing sessions in the military, right, which are an absolute waste of time. And the commander wants to know how the troops are doing. That's dumb. Troops are tired. They're gone constantly. What are they going to say in your dumb little survey? Anyway, listen to your employees. I don't have that much time left, so I'm going to listen. You can see I'm actually paying attention to what that guy in Somalia is telling me. Just a cool random picture. Because I made the slideshow and so I get to pick the pictures. Everyone likes sniper rifles. So that was after I retired. In Iraq, I was asked by some friends if I was interested in providing medical support to the Kurds and helping liberate the last ISIS-held town in Kurdistan. And I was hanging out at a coffee shop. And so I called a friend and got some body armor and an AK and had some fun for 3 days. Sent my wife, Robin, those pictures, and her comment was, looks like you had a good day at work. Not, oh my God, what are you doing? You could have died. She's like, no, that's Jared doing what Jared does. I was asked if I could set up a surfing trip in Somalia. So I made a phone call, and then 6 weeks later, I went to Somalia, Mogadishu, and then up north, and did a surfing trip. I want to get to this. This is important. So after I retired, I went to Iraq, and I was talking to one of my friends who was a Yazidi, and they had the horrible genocide committed against them, and the women were taken and used as sex slaves. This family, all of those girls pictured, were held from between 3 and 5 years as sex slaves. The girl second from the left, nearest me, she was held for 5 years. She had a chain around her neck. She was padlocked to a window, was gang raped 5 times every day. She escaped 5 times, was recaptured, beaten, gang raped, and sold again until her dad was able to pay about $12,000 and secure her freedom. After I retired, I went back and I ended up living in northern Iraq for about 6 months and helped facilitate some of those recoveries of women. I asked them to show me how they were restrained, and they were pros. When they tied me up, I was concerned I wouldn't actually be able to get out. My goal was to teach them a few things and show them how to defeat restraints. And so I said, hey, would the girls like to learn how to fight? And they said yes. And so I came home, talked to Cassie, who's the highest ranked female Krav Maga instructor in the United States. She teaches where I train and my son trains in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I warned her, if you go, you're not going to unhear the stories or unsee the things you're going to see. And she said, I'm in. So we went. 2 people donated $30,000, and 4 of us went. My son, Cassie. I took my son. It was his second time to Iraq. He was 16 when he went his second time. He was her assistant instructor. We taught 250 women how to fight over 2 weeks. And man, they were fantastic students. They were highly, highly, highly motivated to learn how to fight. One of the girls said, if we had had this training 3 years ago, we could have killed our captors. There were 50 of us girls and only 2 of them, but we didn't know that we could fight. I like that picture. Yeah. So the girls have been continued to be trained. We hired a woman in that camp, a survivor herself, but who asked, hey, can I keep doing the training? So we pay her every month. Girls have been training for over a year. 6 of the girls that have been doing the training are no longer taking their medications for their psychological issues, exclusively because of the empowerment and the transition that's taken place because of their self-defense training. It's been that transformative to them. Since then, we came back, and as usual, like I didn't have a plan. We just went and just made it happen. When I came back, realized it was a massive success. So I said, okay, we should actually get organized. So we set up a 501c3, Volatile Charities. We've been asked, of course they want us to go back, and we're anxious to go back. My mom was just in Moldova and Romania working with women who are rescued from human trafficking there. So of course, we're going to Romania and Moldova, the Ukraine. We've been asked to go to Somalia and to Nigeria to teach at-risk women how to fight. We're not going to teach any guys. They're pretty good at fighting anyway. But the women need it. So that's probably the coolest and most personally rewarding thing that I've done since I've retired. Massively impactful. It's cool just to see a girl smile like that. The transformation is incredible, from them looking down, not making eye contact. I won't tell you the stories, but they're not repeatable, of atrocities that have been committed. So to be able to go there and to teach them, and then see that smile, and see the upright, the eye contact, the transformation is incredible. Yeah. So I guess I'm out of time. I had lots more. I guess I need like 3 or 4 hours. I got too many stories. But I will close. One thing before I close, I'm going to steal some more time because I'm here and I can. None of this would have been possible if it wasn't for my faith. I meant to work that in earlier. But it was critical. The reason that I don't have PTSD, the reason that I function at the level that I function, the reason that I have clear focus and sense of purpose while in the military and post-military is because of that clear focus, vision, and sense of purpose that I have for my life. And that comes from God. That comes from knowing that I'm a part of something bigger than myself. It's not about Jeremy being a badass commander. Who gives a shit? Who cares? It was cool, and I did some cool things, and I have some amazing friends and some great experiences and some cool stories. But it all is stepping stones. It was preparatory. Had I not done those things, I would have never been able to teach those girls how to fight, right? And whatever it is that's next. There's always a cool adventure to be had next if you're willing to say yes. And that's what I do. I always say yes. I know that God's got a plan. I say yes. It's up to Him to tell me no. This is the arrangement that we have worked out. I'm 100% serious. I say yes to anything that sounds cool. And that's like, does this sound fun? Yes. Okay, I'm going to do it. He has to stop me. And He's done it. He stopped me more than once for things that weren't bad ideas, but just weren't in line with Him. But we always have God's permission to move forward with whatever it is that you want to do, as long as it's not illegal. Pretty simple rule. If it's not legal, you can do it, and it has God's blessing and hand on it, and He'll actually. I always cheat. I never fight fair. I cheat because I have God on my side, and so it's never a fair fight. I could tell you many stories of landing in helicopters and people should be shooting us, but we're killing them, and there's no reason for the protection. But I don't even know how many stories where I should be dead, I'm not, and you can't explain it. They were manning machine guns. These guys like to die. They don't want to run. They're hardened fighters. They love killing us. And we shot them as they ran away. And that happened time after time after time. God's hand of protection, delivering some justice, doing some good. That's all I got. Thank you for your time. Dennis, thank you for inviting me. And thank you, crew and Priority One Associates, for hosting. And if you guys don't support them financially, you should. Because they do a great job. So, thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thanks so much for all of the stories that you told. And I just want to say, I didn't look at my cell phone one time. So, not twice either. Just kidding. But seriously, thank you for your service to our country, ongoing service, I should say, and your leadership. Can we give him another hand, please? I always feel like such a lightweight when I hear from members of the military and what they've done for our country. It's pretty amazing and spectacular. And I think just on the lines of leadership, and that's what this luncheon is all about. We have different concepts of leadership. I think what is a true leader. We often think of someone that's very authoritative, has many people reporting to them. Maybe a general barking out orders, a football coach, screaming at his players, something like that. But I would just say that I learned a little bit more about leadership about 30 years ago, and that was the day I actually accepted Christ as my personal Savior, and wasn't a Christian growing up, but I met a wonderful lady, just like you, Jeremy. Wonderful wife of mine, kind of gently prodded me to attend church, and it was kind of there that I really learned what the gospel really was. And I also read the Bible too, and that's really what had a transformational effect on my life, and learning more about Jesus and his life and why he came here. He came to die for us, obviously, but he also came to serve us and show us how to serve others while we're here on earth. And so that other type of leadership is called servant leadership. We don't really, kind of hard to think of those two in the same sentence, but that's really what Jesus wanted us to do, was to serve each other. You don't have to have people under you. You don't have to bark out orders. You can be a leader and influencer. And so that's kind of what I learned from leadership. So a little bit about leader impact. So all of you should have at your tables, there's a brochure on leader impact. I just want to bring your attention to. I'll tell you a little bit about leader impact. So leader impact is a community of business professionals who are committed to developing their leadership skills and integrating their personal, professional, and spiritual lives. These groups are led by established business leaders who impart their perspectives, and there are modules that are designed to stimulate conversation and interaction to group members so they can grow in their abilities to lead. So we want to invite you to be a part of this venture. The professionals that you'll be in contact with have similar journeys, similar goals that you do. Each module has 8 sessions and is focused to study for a definite duration. The leader of the group will determine the module and what will be discussed. And the plan to begin these groups are actually going to start at the beginning of next year, so not that far off. Each table has an envelope. If someone could grab that envelope at the middle of the table. There's a card inside. This is about as simple as it gets. If you could just fill out this card, and really, there's kind of, as you fill out your name and what have you, there's a box here that says, I want to be in a leader impact group. All you got to do is check that if you want to, if you feel led to. If you don't, that's fine as well. Just want to make this opportunity available to everyone here today. So I think it's a very worthwhile program. Sometimes we need help understanding how to lead. There's definitely techniques that work better than others. So again, I would encourage you to check the box if you feel so led. Again, thank you everyone for coming today. I appreciate your attention. Hopefully no one looked at their cell phones, Jeremy. But again, I want to thank Jeremy for just a wonderful session on his experiences. Thank you.